This is the crew of the Rainbow Warrior as they are departing from Nome, Alaska for the whaling station at Lorino on the Siberian coast in the Bering Sea. That's the skipper of the Rainbow Warrior there, Peter Wilcox. The fellow in the dark blue windbreaker is Wolfgang Fischer from West Germany, the Russian interpreter. Your narrator here is Patrick Moore, director of Greenpeace Canada and one of the organizers of this expedition and a founder of Greenpeace. And that's Bob Cummings there on the railing. He's the shipboard coordinator for the campaign. He's also a founder of Greenpeace and is on board the Rainbow Warrior in Nome now. Chris Cook in the red jacket is the administrative director of Greenpeace for the United States. He holds a pretty big job in Washington, D.C. for Greenpeace. This is more or less his first field campaign, and he is being held in Russia now. He was one of the 6 that was arrested on shore. Obviously, crossing from U.S. territorial waters into the Soviet Union, observing the protocol of flying the country's flag whose waters you are in higher than your own flag or the flag of registry. So down comes the stars and stripes and up goes the hammer and sickle. Well, I guess this explains perhaps why they weren't noticed coming into Soviet territory. Here we have the crew of the Rainbow Warrior on the bow. I believe they are watching the Soviet landfall approach now. This is now early a.m. Monday morning, coming into Siberia in Soviet waters now. Oh, perhaps this is the secret camera that they put on the mast. In case they were boarded and had everything seized, they would at least get a couple of shots down onto the deck. That may well be what that is, but I won't guarantee it. But they may have just been trying to make it look like it had always been there by spraying a little green up there. This is approaching the whaling station at Lorino. The Zodiac has been launched here now. 2 Zodiacs launched, 3 Zodiacs going in to document the nature of this whaling operation, which of course Greenpeace suspected correctly is not a whaling operation by Aboriginal people or Siberian Eskimos as the Soviets claim, but is a commercial mink ranching or fur-bearing animal ranching at least operation. Up on the cliffs there are the pens where the animals are maintained. It's just like any mink farm situation, only in this case they're feeding whales, gray whales, to the mink. 179 gray whales are killed by the Soviets here with a modern harpoon boat each year, ostensibly for the purpose of Eskimo food supply. These are the pens. Now you see them on stilts. It's to keep the animals up off the ground. There's more pens and more pens. So you can see it's quite an extensive setup they have up there. And obviously a fairly modern European settlement, hardly a traditional Eskimo village. Here you see the whaling station itself. Right there in the center is where they cut up the whales. You can see some steam there. They're probably cutting up whales there right at this time, as this is the height of the whaling season. It'll come back to it here. There it is. You can see a we're going to come back again in a minute. There, you can see the conveyor belt, and these are the pens where the animals are kept. There's 3 big structures up here in the foreground, and for all we know there may be some in the background as well. You can see they're on stilts. There's our people on the beach there. I assume this is where they get apprehended. Up on the hill there are the structures where the animals are kept. Again, what we've found there is that the whaling station is actually being used as a source of food for fur-bearing animals to produce furs for commercial sale. It's been a common practice around the world. The whales off the coast of Oregon in the United States were slaughtered largely for mink food.
The Soviets were claiming what?
They were claiming that this was an Eskimo village, basically. But as you'll see in further shots, it doesn't look too much like an Eskimo village. A Soviet helicopter. I guess this is the first official presence. And they'll see a lot more of this guy before the day is over. The helicopter flying over the animal pens there, you get a really good look at them. Wolfgang Fischer from West Germany, the Russian interpreter, possibly in contact now with the shore, with the commander of the Soviet authorities that seized the Greenpeace people when they went ashore. Oh, now the Rainbow Warrior is underway here, so the people have been arrested and already taken away. This is where the Rainbow Warrior tries to escape, begins its escape, and somewhere here this helicopter fires 2 flares across their bow. I don't know if it's on the footage or not, but they're obviously making their getaway out of Lorino Harbor now. There they go. Now begins about 5.5-hour chase. I imagine thinking about their fellow crew members that are left behind. Now here we have Jim Henry, who is the first mate of the Rainbow Warrior, getting into a Zodiac to try to escape with the film. See, he's got a lot of extra gas tanks there. He's going on a 6 to 8 hour run, or at least that was the plan at this time, and heading for the coast of Alaska because the Rainbow Warrior saw an unidentified ship closing on it, assuming it was a Soviet vessel, which it did turn out to be, and was afraid it would stop them and seize the film. So they set Jim Henry off on this mission.
He has the film there?
He has the film in that boat. There is the Soviet ship that's approaching. There's the Soviet warship approaching now, and it has launched its own high-speed boat. This high-speed boat didn't become a part of the chase. I don't know what eventually happened to it.
Now this is how far off land?
This is still inside Soviet territory, so it's within 12 miles of the coast.
Mm-hmm. And this is after they've made their documentation on the coast?
That's right. Now here's a Soviet helicopter hovering over top of our Zodiac, which is maneuvering to avoid the downdraft from the helicopter. The helicopter is harassing the Zodiac with Jim Henry in it that's trying to escape.
He is eventually arrested.
Well, he eventually ends up in the ocean somehow, with the Zodiac going around in circles, but we'll come to that. I didn't pick it out in the last round too well, but now see, he's still being harassed here. Now the fog closes in around this time, and they lose visual contact with the Zodiac. That's the Soviet ship in the background again there.
So right now they're focusing their harassment on the small little inflatable
That's
boats.
right. They're trying to swamp him or trying to stop him, turn him around. I don't know what they're trying to do, but they're definitely harassing him with the downdraft from the chopper blades.
And that looks like it may have gone in the water right there.
No, I think he's still in the boat there. He's trying to get away from the helicopter.
I see. Okay.
You know, the choppers, I don't know if this is the same chopper. There were 2 or 3 helicopters dispatched during this period of attempting to escape. Now the fog is setting in. And they've lost contact with the Zodiac. So the crew members here are looking for the Zodiac. Going up to the crow's nest to look for the Zodiac.
This is all in the Bering Sea.
Yes, and at this point still inside Soviet territorial waters. You can see just a little bit to the right there we're flying the Soviet flag.
Why is that?
Because we're in Soviet waters. That's protocol. Now there's the helicopter. That is where it's picking Jim Henry out of the water. Now you cannot see there. You can't make out what's happening, but he has fallen out of this Zodiac somehow, and it is left going around in circles like this, and this is why we're concerned for his medical condition. He's the only one that we're really worried about. We don't know how he ended up in the ocean and why he had to be pulled out by the Soviet chopper. But this Zodiac is full of all the film of the Soviet whaling station and all the film that was taken prior to that. So it's very valuable film footage, and here it is going around in circles in the middle of the Bering Sea inside the Soviet Union.
This is where the injury takes place to your man.
Yes, I believe that's him there. Bruce Abraham has to make the jump into the Zodiac, which you will see, moving one Zodiac aside on the deck so there's room for the other one to come aboard. I'm sure I didn't pass through only a few of them. This was a pretty ridiculous situation to find yourself in.
A boat with all the film, all the documentation, what you need.
Yeah, going around in circles. There he goes. That's Bruce. See, I think he hit his leg either on the outboard motor or it got jammed in the stern there as he jumped. He jumped a little bit too late.
He just jumped onto the thing to control it. He's now on board.
He's now on board and is bringing the Zodiac back in. Now the Rainbow Warrior is a sitting duck here, stopped still inside Soviet waters. You see they've gone full reverse here, and they'll quickly grab hold of the Zodiac by the line that you hoist it up with.
This was the one thing you were mentioning
Oh,
before.
I imagine
you were
they...
most concerned about stopping the boat. Never
Yes.
stop.
He still probably doesn't realize he's got a broken leg at this point. Well, he's favoring that leg a little. Yep, he's favoring his leg quite a bit there. His left leg, yeah. He probably just thinks he's twisted it. Up comes the Zodiac, and you'll see the prop wash just behind it here. There you see the prop wash just behind there. The boat's now under power again.
Now, how big is your boat?
Our boat is 150 feet, 400 tons.
And how fast can it travel?
10 knots easy, 12 knots with a fair wind downhill. That fellow in the blue is the Canadian press correspondent, Gary Kingston, that came aboard the ship into Russia with us. That's the film, the precious film. and all the extra gas and water. They're now in American waters, or what could be called international waters, depending on whether you use the 12-mile limit or the Convention of 1867. The Convention just draws a line between the two countries down the middle of the Bering Strait, whereas the 12-mile limit would create international waters in between the Soviet Union and the United States. And this is in international waters now. The Soviets have called upon this Soviet merchant vessel to attempt to stop us from leaving with the ship and the crew and the film.
They have not followed you out with their warship.
Yes, the warship is behind us now. This ship, though, has radioed to us and told us to stop or it will stop us. And obviously this is a merchant vessel that has been pressed into service by the Navy or is a naval vessel disguised as a merchant vessel. It could be a surveillance ship, or it could be a government research ship or something like that, but it looks like a merchant freighter. It's a type of ship you would expect to be in coastal freight traffic in a place like this. Thus here you see it cutting across the bow. I believe this is the place where it comes closest. They're trying to force us to stop our ship, and once you do that, you really become a sitting duck, because then it's easy to get up to you and stop you. Once you're stopped, you're finished. So you've just got to keep up the momentum. Now that wasn't, I don't know if that was the closest one or not. It may have been. Anyways, it was too close for comfort at 10 knots. And the Soviet ship, of course, is able to travel quite a bit faster than that, probably do 16 knots. This is the Rainbow Warrior under full speed here. Here they come now. This is the type of maneuvering they were using, basically a game of chicken. And what the skipper did here is something we talked about actually before he went up there, is as the Russian ship is coming across the bow, you veer off with it, veer to starboard, and come into a parallel course. Now, at that point, they feel they've got you. They've turned you 90 degrees, and you're going off in the wrong direction, and they want to just keep edging you around. But instead of continuing, even though you're slower than they are, you can stop faster than they can. So you put it in full reverse about here and cut back across their stern while they just continue going forward.
They try to cut you off. You allow them to cut you off. You just are able to stop quicker.
You
One
stop,
of the advantages of being slower.
That's right. One of the advantages of being smaller rather than so much slower is the advantage of having less momentum. It's like a supertanker takes 10 miles. The Rainbow Warrior only takes half a mile, and this big ship here might take 2 miles to stop. So now the Rainbow Warrior's falling off now. And you can see here that she's fallen off sufficiently now to cut across the stern, and this requires that the Soviet ship make a U-turn. And the other thing about it being bigger is that it can't turn around in as tight a corner. So, as I mentioned in the previous film, it's sort of like a bear trying to catch a rabbit. Now they have to do a U-ey, meanwhile we're heading off.
And where's the warship? Behind you?
Yes, it's quite a ways behind us at this point.
Why did it not come in?
I don't know. I suppose they felt it would not look so bad on camera if it was a merchant vessel that stopped us. There's a gray whale. Just at the appropriate moment, a gray whale surfaces between the Russians and the Rainbow Warriors, otherwise known as the Greenpeacers. A certain sign that we will escape. This whole thing, from when they left Lorino till when they finally got away, was about 4 hours of being chased the whole time by helicopters and warships. There's another gray whale. Not quite so clear, that one. And here comes the Soviet warship now. This is where I thought we were before. The merchant vessel has fallen right off. We're well out of Soviet waters now. But they have followed us in hot pursuit, as they would call it. There is a legal convention for that if you do something inside someone's territory, they can chase you outside and keep chasing you even though you make it into international waters. Mm-hmm. That's called hot pursuit. Soviet chopper now coming over. The warship now is radioing us, telling us to stop and accept a boarding party. And we radio back, we will not stop. We continually stated we cannot stop at this time. And they would ask, what are your intentions? And our response was, destination Nome unless fired upon. Get a clear look at the red star on it and the nature of the machine. Here we are, number 11. There's the Soviet warship bearing down now on the Rainbow Warrior. And I think this is where they really wondered whether they were actually going to make it. They were getting closer to Alaska here. They were closer to Alaska than they were to Siberia here. And they've given word in no uncertain terms that they're going to stop the Rainbow Warrior and board it. About here, the skipper of the Rainbow Warrior demands confirmation from the Soviet military vessel that they are not in Soviet waters. And the Soviet vessel confirms that fact. But of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that they can't stop the Rainbow Warrior and board them. Again, the idea of hot pursuit. There she is, even closer. And there's flying the Stars and Stripes back in U.S. waters. Here we have the Soviet warship now closing in quickly on the Rainbow Warrior. This is in international waters or American waters, however you wish to define it. It's certainly well out of Soviet waters. The warship has indicated that the Rainbow Warrior must stop and accept a boarding party. Pretty good-sized warship, though. I imagine the men and women of the Rainbow Warrior's hearts were pounding pretty fast here, because this is the moment of truth. They either get caught when they're almost home free, or they don't, which was the case, thank goodness. The Soviet ship has slowed down now. You can see from its wake. And there, finally, the Soviet warship falling back, giving up any hope of catching the Rainbow Warrior, and I suppose at this point they realize they're free, as they're well into the American side of the Bering Strait, well out of the Soviet 12-mile limit, and clearly the Soviet ship has given up the chase. There's one of the helicopters, or this is an aircraft coming in now. First we've seen of this in any of the footage. Pretty old timer by the looks of it. I guess just a coastal surveillance plane.